All right. Good evening, everybody. Um, well, it's probably evening for some of you, probably other times of day for others of you. But it's evening for me, so I'm going to say good evening. Um, Glad to have you all here. I see a couple people in the chat already. Mel, good to see you. You were here quite a bit before we even got started, so good to see you. And then Matt, good to see you as well. So if you are watching live, don't forget to say hello in the chat. Just let me know that you're here. And of course, this is an Ask Me Anything. That doesn't mean that I know everything or that I'll even have necessarily a good answer for you, but I will do my best to answer the questions that you have. Uh, and if you might ask a question to something I have absolutely no clue about, and I'll just be honest with you and tell you I don't know. But this is kind of an open forum for you guys to just say hi and ask any questions and see if I can help you out in some way in your career as a junior dev. Then that's my goal, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. So, all right, we've got Dean's in here now. Good to see you, Dean. Excuse me. So obviously, one of the big things that we wanted to mention first of all, um, that honestly I'm blown away. I'm incredibly shocked, to be honest with you. I forget how many subscribers we had last Saturday. Was it last Saturday? I can't remember when it was exactly, but last time I did a quick live stream, we had like 900 some subscribers, and I said it'd be really awesome if we could turn over 1,000 subscribers. Honestly, I didn't think that was gonna happen, and then all of a sudden I got tons of subscribers over the last several days, and we actually hit 1,000 subscribers um, before today. We actually hit it probably Saturday night sometime while I was sleeping. So very, very cool to be able to hit 1,000 subscribers. It doesn't, at the end of the day, 1,000 is just a number, obviously. But there's just something about hitting, triple zeros. That's just really cool. So thank you to everybody who has subscribed and everybody who's been watching the videos, everybody who's been leaving comments, especially that's probably the biggest thing for me is the interaction that you guys give me here in the live streams, on the videos, leaving comments, even critiques. Those are fine too, because I don't know everything and I don't always say things that make sense sometimes too. So feel free to critique me as well. But thank you all for being a part of the channel and being a part of the community. I know many of you guys are already in the Discord server, and if you're not, check that out. The link should be good this time in the description here. So hopefully nobody tells me that it's not working, and if it is not working, we'll fix it later. But yeah, 1,000. So I opened it up this morning. It's over 1,000. It's 1,020 now. Before we got on here, it's just kind of been growing like crazy. That's awesome. Honestly, I never thought that I would have 1,000 people who would even watch the videos, let alone would be interested enough to subscribe and support the channel. So thank you to everybody who has. We're gonna celebrate it here and enjoy it, and see where it goes in the future. So thank you for being a part of the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel and the Discord server and all the other things that we've got going on in the future. So I did just want to take a minute here and let everybody know I will be creating and posting some more videos here this week and in the coming weeks than I have recently. It's been a little bit busy at work and just family stuff and things that kind of have been taking up my time and making it, well, honestly, just making me tired. Not really having the energy to jump in and do those as much. So thank you for sticking around with me, even while we're still trying to kind of find our footing, find our way as we're trying to figure out what's going to work best for videos and things. But we are still going to I still have some videos to shoot for the Developer Odyssey. that one's going to be a little bit shorter than I originally planned, just because there's some things that I think are not as necessary for that specific series. So we'll probably wrap that up here in the next month or so. So that series will be done. But as many of you know, we'll be starting a new live stream series, and I'll kind of give some more information about that here in a few minutes. But so one of the things about being a YouTuber is there's lots of opinions about how you should do YouTube, right? There's lots of opinions about how you should make your videos, opinions about how you should do your live streams. And as a new YouTuber, it's really easy to kind of get sucked into a lot of that stuff and spend a lot of time doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, that may be helpful, may not be helpful. Hopefully you guys feel like the videos have been getting better over the time, but I feel like I've kind of fallen into the trap of making videos a certain way, more to get people to view them than to be helpful and informative. And so you might notice that things will change a little bit in how the videos are structured, how I'm going to be creating them. They're going to be hopefully not as long as they have been, due to some of the ideals that some people have about how you should do YouTube videos. But the goal is to try to make the videos in the future something that's just more direct and more simple and more straight to the point, without as much fluff as we've had here to this point. So hopefully that'll be more beneficial to you guys. You'll appreciate that a little bit more than maybe you have recently, as we've tried to kind of learn a few things and build onto the channel here. But as always, please leave feedback on the videos. Leave feedback in the Discord server, you know, anywhere that you want to. You can send me an email at devmentordave.com via the form there. So there's lots of different ways that you can get a hold of me, lots of different ways that you can give me feedback on the videos. If you think, you know, we're taking too much time talking about one thing or another thing, or you just want to hear information about a specific topic, you know, let me know. So we're going to try to change that structure a little bit going forward and try to make those videos a little bit more helpful and less gamification there, trying to make it fit for YouTube. We'll just try to make it helpful. How's that? So upcoming live streams. So we've been doing this January and February once a month. We did sneak one in there the other day, just as more of a celebration of reaching 900 subscribers, and now we're over 1,000. So, but we are planning, and I don't have an exact start date, but probably mid-March and onward, I'm planning on doing a live stream on Saturday mornings. We looked at Saturdays at 10. That seemed to work pretty well for a lot of people. But I might throw up another poll now that we've got quite a few more subscribers than we did the last time. I might throw up another poll and just see if everyone still prefers Saturday, or if something like Monday night would work better. We'll just kind of see how that works. I know we have a lot of subscribers who are across the pond, that may not work very well for like a Monday night, but Saturday morning works better. But I know a lot of people here don't want to get up on Saturday and listen to somebody talk for an hour or two. So we'll see how it goes. I'll throw up a poll and see what everybody thinks here this week. But what we're going to be doing with that is we'll actually be going through the process of doing a project. And what I want it to do, I want it to be interactive. Obviously it's interactive because we'll have the chat here, which I'll get to in a second. I see a couple of notes from Dean here, but I want to make it interactive, not just with the chat, but make it something that you guys can participate in, even from a coding standpoint. So we're going to talk about the project. We're going to talk about things that you want to do when you're developing a project, questions that you want to ask. We're going to talk about, you know, how you deal with the client and what questions you should be asking to the client. I'll also have some other videos coming up that will be kind of questions for you to respond to. I've got some Google forms that I'll have out there, so we'll kind of go through different people's answers to that in upcoming videos. So I want this to be much more of a collaborative effort, not just me doing a bunch of videos about a topic, or just a bunch of live stream about a topic. I want us to actually collaborate on a project, In that project, most likely, I'm pretty much settled on doing my original idea, which was a budgeting app. And again, you can find a budgeting app all over the place, but we're going to do one with me as the client, the way that I want to do my budgets. And excuse me. And so you guys will be able to participate that if you want to. You'll be able to view tickets and create pull requests into a real repository, and we'll do PR reviews. If you don't want your PR reviewed, just let me know. But we'll pick some random ones and do some reviews and take a look at it and kind of go through the actual process that you would go through if you were part of a dev team, or at least based on my experiences in being on lots of different dev teams, kind of some of the general things that you do as a developer. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to try to do that weekly as much as possible. Obviously life will kind of get in the way from time to time, as it does, and vacations and things like that. So there'll be times that we won't have it, but I'll make sure that we get that announced ahead of time. So that's the plan. Probably mid-March is when we will get that started up. But I'll keep everybody up to date there. And I know a lot of you are looking forward to that. As we talked about that a few weeks ago, maybe it was even our January live stream that we first talked about, I think. But I know a lot of you were really interested in that. So hopefully we'll be able to get that up and running, and hopefully it'll be beneficial to you as we go. All right. So let me jump into questions, because that's really the whole point of tonight. Is to ask your questions. So I've got a few questions here that were submitted prior to the live stream. If you have a question, I think there might be a couple here already, but if you have a question, if you would put like some question marks in front of your question, just to help them stand out a little bit more from other chat messages as we get going here. Because I know different people will respond to different things. So I want to make sure I can pick out the questions later on. So let me just skim through here. I'm going to copy, Dean, I'm going to copy your question if I can. Can I? Copy? Of course not. Okay. I'll try to get to it here. Let me run through these questions first, and then I'll take a look at that one. Let's see. That'd be amazing. Super excited. Yeah, I'm really hoping that that it kind of catches on, and we get some good participation, especially when we get to like the code and the code reviews and things like that. Mel, yeah, looking for it. Awesome. Okay, so question number 1, which is kind of a weird question, from a friend of mine named Sam, and I think he's just trolling me, but just in case he's not, I'm going to answer it as if it's a real question. So he said, basically his question is, are we living in a simulation? And it's really funny because I actually had this conversation with my boss earlier today. Somebody brought it up in a video call that we were on. Are we living in a simulation? Would we know if we were? I don't think that we would. I think that's the whole point of a simulation. That's nobody in the Matrix knew they were in the Matrix unless, they got outside help. So, I don't think that we would know even if we were, but I would say, no, we're not. We're not living in a simulation. So feel free to challenge my opinion if you'd like, but that's as far as I'm going on that one. All right. Real questions. Real questions. Here we go. This one's from Dalen. This one came through devmentordave.com on the forum there. I do get those emails. I get a lot of spam, but I do get those emails and I do read them, and I do try to respond either here in like a live stream, or I try to respond via email if possible. So the internet is a simulation. Nice, Dean. I answer all ringing payphones just in case. That's probably a good idea. Although I can't find any payphones hardly anymore because we all have cell phones, but that's awesome. All right. So Dalen says, I wanted your take or suggestion on portfolio websites. Do interviewers even see portfolio websites of software engineers since there are so many applicants? Should I work on a portfolio website or work on other projects and courses? That's a really good question. And as with a lot of answers, the answer is it depends. So it depends on the company. It depends on the interviewer, kind of what their philosophy is. It also depends on, what level of job you're applying for. So that's probably going to be more helpful, more beneficial for a junior dev when you're trying to get into. If you're a senior dev and they're asking for a portfolio, that would be a little odd, but it's not completely uncommon for junior devs. So there's a couple of problems that I see with portfolios. And that one of them is most people build a portfolio when they're going through a boot camp, right? So they're going through some sort of training. They're going through whether that's a tutorial series or whether that's a boot camp or something like that. And the problem is a lot of people just build their portfolios based off of the projects that they have to do um, for those courses. And what you end up getting is a lot of the same type of stuff. And it's really hard. Like, if you get a really good portfolio, you always have to question, did that person actually do the work? Because a portfolio for us is either just a website that's up or an application that's up, or it's, like a GitHub or something like that. And honestly, I mean, you can copy paste stuff from anywhere, stick it into a repository and push it up under your name and claim that it's yours. And that's not necessarily something that we can validate very well, right? So for me, I'm not a huge fan of determining somebody's ability based on a portfolio. One thing a portfolio does for you is it shows effort that has been put in. Again, though, how much of that effort was actually yours is something that I think could always be in question. And so that's why I'm not a huge fan of it. I am more of a fan of giving an applicant a project, like even just a small like test, not necessarily like a leak code test or something like that, but like a project. Say, give me CRUD for cars, models, years, makes, things like that. Give me some CRUD. Give me an application that allows me to list and add and update and delete, right? So create, read, update, delete. So I want a very small application that lets me do all that, and then I want you to submit that with your as a GitHub or as a PR, either to my GitHub or send me a new link, because then it has to be something that's done by them within a certain time frame. So while you can still copy that, I think you can give certain parameters, certain instructions that will help somebody be able to tell if you just copied stuff. Like, you can give specific requirements that will help this person actually did the work, or this person either didn't listen to the rules, or they just copied some stuff and they don't necessarily know what they're doing. But yeah, Mel, that's a very good point. And that's really, for me, what it comes down to is they're just talking points. So a portfolio should be something that just opens the conversation for you to then explain what you have done with that work. Excuse me. We had chili this evening, so getting a little heartburn. So portfolios really are just the door for you to talk about what you can do. And if you are talking about your portfolio, I should be able to open up your GitHub. And when you talk about, working with this type of technology, or when you talk about working, dealing with this problem or that problem, or you talk about, what you did for managing users in this instance, I can actually go into your code and see what you're talking about. And I can see sometimes some of the struggles that you went through and the solutions that you came up with. So really, they are just talking points, in my opinion. If somebody is judging your ability to do a job based off of your portfolio, either they're looking for something very specific in from a knowledge standpoint, such as a particular language or a particular um, framework in that language, or they're just very particular in the style that they're looking for, especially for like a front end dev, something like that. But most of the companies that I have worked for, very little of the time was spent looking at portfolios. They really don't even look at them until they've decided that you're somebody to uh, that they're interested in interviewing. So I would say it's most likely not going to get you an interview, but it will help you in the interview process at most companies. And to the degree that that affects the decision is going to vary based on the company, very based on what they do, how they view the importance of the portfolio. But yeah, so I would say most of the time, don't spend your whole time trying to figure out how to create a great portfolio. Your portfolio is just the things that you've done. Um, Highlight the best ones. Maybe create two different GitHubs. One GitHub is the one for stuff that you want to show, and the other one's just for your testing and learning. But I would spend more time learning more things or learning things better than I would worrying about trying to create this perfect portfolio to try to, to try to get somebody's attention. So hopefully that helps, Dalen, and gives you at least some direction there as far as how much time to spend on those portfolios. I know with some of the things that I've done as far as teaching, um, there will often be like a demonstration day where they'll have companies come and see the work that you've done. I don't know how many companies have actually pursued someone based off of that. I I don't have those numbers, so it would just be a shot in the dark guess. But I would imagine most people hire based off of how you communicate about what you're doing, not based off of your portfolio. So that's my understanding and opinion on the portfolio issue. Okay, so we had another question from Steven. This one also came through devmentordave.com form. And this one says, I'm learning the Mern stack, and I just wanted to know if the Mern stack is good for getting your first job, as there are not that many Mern stack internships or newer jobs right now. All right, so this is a question I actually get a lot, not specifically about the Mern stack, but about pretty much any any junior dev role. And even some senior dev roles. I know a lot of senior devs have been laid off recently from different companies, and a lot of times they'll be asking, "What do I need to be learning in order to get a job?" And the problem is that's going to vary again, depending on your location. It's going to vary depending on how wide of a net you're casting for your job search. So if you are looking to potentially, let's say you're outside the United States and you're looking to get a job with a United States company, well, you're not going to worry so much, obviously, about what's popular in your country. You're going to worry about what's popular in the United States. So to say that the Mern stack is a good stack or a bad stack, or it's going to be easier or harder to get a job, really just depends on where you're looking for the job. Right now, React, which is part of that Mern stack, is really popular in a lot of the jobs that I'm seeing. Even at the company I work for, we're getting an increase in React jobs that we didn't have before. So right now, React is a little bit on the surge. I haven't honestly messed with MongoDB for a few years now, so I don't really know if Mongo's still cool to everybody or not. It's obviously still part of multiple stacks, so I'm sure it's still being used for different things. But that to me really is the thing. And again, it goes back to I've got a video up on do you code for love or money, right? Do you code because you enjoy what you're learning, or are you trying to learn something because you need to get a job? And all of those things kind of come into play with this question. So So really, it's to me, it's more about what do you like the MERN stack, and if you like the MERN stack, then I think you should learn it as well as you possibly can, so that you become a senior developer that has that skill set, and you can jump into projects that have that already in place. Because that's typically what happens is people are looking for specific skills because they already have a project that requires those skills. Whether that's a Laravel project, or whether that's a MERN stack project, or whether that's a Vue project, or Java, or C++, or anything else. Usually people hire developers because they need that specific knowledge for something that they have, whether it's a project that they're getting ready to start, or a project that they're taking over from somebody else, or a project, maybe it's just an old project that somebody has running and they need some quick fixes for it. So when you see those job descriptions, they're looking for people because they have work in those specific areas. And so that's something to maybe keep an eye on, is the more you see of MERN stack, or the more you see of LAMP stack, but the more you see of a specific stack, or a specific language, or framework, or something like that, that is really the indicator as far as how much of that work is going on, because that means there's a lot of that work coming in, and so they need somebody that can do that work. So for me, if you need a job right now, if you can keep learning and you don't need a job, then I would say keep learning the MERN stack. But because it's a perfectly fine stack, and there will be jobs if there aren't any right this second. There's kind of a cyclical thing. There will be jobs that pop up, even if it's just old MERN stack applications that nobody's keeping updated, or something like that. It's like PHP kind of went a little downhill for a while because there wasn't that much work in it. There's lots of other shinier things, but then there were some old applications that needed PHP developers, and so it started coming back up a little bit more. And then of course you've got some good frameworks like Laravel that have made a surge, and things like that. But I would say look for what's popular, not necessarily popular in learning. Let's look for what's popular in job postings, because that's how you know what people need. Lots of people want to teach you certain things because that's what they know. And so I wouldn't necessarily look at what's popular and what people are learning. Look at what's popular and what's being posted on the job boards. So that would be my suggestion. If you like it and you can afford to keep learning it without a job, do that. Otherwise, look and see what's popular, and that's something that you think you can pick up. Yeah, it's true, Dean. So one of the cool things about programming, and one of the things that I like about it, is once you get the basics of programming itself down, um, learning a new language or a new framework is more about learning the new syntax, how they use those attributes, those realities of programming. Um, yeah, exactly. He said it's great because it seems like concepts stay the same from language to language, routing, etc. Syntax might change, but you can pick it up quick. Yeah, once, and that's why, excuse me, that's why I tell people, don't try to learn a bunch of languages right out of the gate, right? Pick a language, whether that's JavaScript, PHP, excuse me, man, JavaScript, PHP, C++, C Sharp, whatever, Python, Rust. We can keep going, right? So pick one and learn it really, really well. Get good at it. Because if you get good at one language, you can pick up any other language. You may not like it after you pick it up, but you can pick up other languages. You can pick up other frameworks. I'm not a huge fan of React, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just not. I know there's lots of people that love it. Sue me. I'm just not a huge fan of React. I've learned Angular and I've learned Vue, and I've done a little bit with React. I just don't like it. That's my personal opinion. But I can still program in it because I understand the concepts of not just JavaScript and TypeScript, which a lot of times it's React and TypeScript. I understand those, and I understand how front-end frameworks generally work. And they all, to some degrees, work about the same. So that's why you can kind of jump from one thing to another once you've gotten good and comfortable in one language. So that's what I always say. Pick one language, get comfortable in that language. I don't even like saying get good, because that's that's subjective, right? What does good mean? But get comfortable in that language, and then you can pick up other languages and kind of jump in and start learning some other things along the way. And it'll be a whole lot easier to pick up those new languages when you're comfortable with that first starting one. And that can even begin with JavaScript. My first, foray into real programming was more in PHP. And I felt like knowing PHP actually helped me learn JavaScript better once I started doing real programming stuff in JavaScript. So once you get the basic concepts down, you're going to be able to go to other languages and get up to speed pretty quickly with most of those other languages and frameworks. Okay, so that's all the questions that I had ahead of time. I want to jump back over to Dean's question over here. He says the current company he's a junior dev. It's kind of imploding. Some layoffs. Oh, execs leaving the company, etc. My mentor left the company as well, so I've been in a rut the last 5 or 6 months. Yeah. Is it a bad look to try to find a new junior role, or should I just go for a mid-level role and figure out the rest? I always recommend, I don't know, leave me a note, Dean. How long have you been there? How long have you been doing it as an actual employee, as a junior dev? Because that will make a difference in my suggestion. But what I typically suggest to any developer, really, this would be junior developer, senior developer, I would almost always suggest that someone apply higher than they think they are. Apply higher than you think that you are in your knowledge. Apply higher than you think you're worth in your compensation. And the reason for that is because we tend to be very critical of ourselves. Now, I have worked with some devs who were not critical of themselves, who thought they were God's gift to the development world. But I have found most developers tend to undervalue themselves. They tend to under-evaluate themselves. They tend to think of themselves as not as knowledgeable, and part of that's because we compare ourselves to other devs around us. Especially if we interact with other devs on a constant basis, and we're getting a lot of help from them, then we tend to think lower of ourselves because we see that we're being helped by others, and we can kind of feel like we're dependent on somebody else, and so we're not as independent as we would like to be. So we tend to kind of downplay who we are. And anytime you go into a job interview, I mean, at the end of the day, really, you're selling yourself. That's what interviewing is. It's selling you to that company. And so that's why I tell pretty much everybody most of the time, shoot for something higher than what you think you have the ability to do. Excuse me. Unless there's something clear in the job description that you just know, I can't do that. Like, if there's something there, then don't apply for that. But what I found is developers tend to be people who rise to a challenge. And so if we're just playing it safe and comfortable, you never know what you could have done, right? You never know what position you could be better in, what you could bring to another company and value. We often downplay our experience outside of the dev world and don't think that helps us. But there's a lot of skills that we can develop outside of being a developer that help us as developers and help us as teammates. And so I would generally recommend that you go for something else. I did see in here, it says that you have been doing it for 2 years, web support for the first, and the past year actually doing some production coding. Yeah. But so here's, and it's, you did say you had a mentor. Yeah. Every job posting has a million technologies. Um, so that is true. And that's a big wish list. So that's how I look at it. I look at it as most job postings are a wish list of what they would love to have. But unfortunately, especially at a junior level, you're not going to have that. And and I think good companies know that. Good companies know that, but they're trying to get as much as they can, right? You always remember this, it's a business, right? So every company is going to try to get the most they can from an experience standpoint and a knowledge standpoint for as little as they can pay in compensation. That's just good business. That's not because they're horrible people. That's just smart, right? So yeah, I honestly, if it looks like you have the skill set for the core of what they expect you to do at the job, I would apply for it. Even if you feel like you don't deserve to be at that level, I would rather they tell me that I don't deserve to be at that level than me not think that I can do it and never pursue something better. So I would generally say go for it. Apply for it. Let them say no. Let them ignore you. Let them tell you that you don't have the skills that they need, instead of limiting yourself, right? So that would generally be my opinion. Now, the only thing that I would say to cancel that would be if you had less than a year of experience. But with 2 years, I know only one of that, half of those years is an actual, coding, but you have other experience in the IT world along with that. So I would say, especially having had a mentor, that makes a big difference. Um, I know one of the guys that I mentored years ago, he worked at a job where I don't think he had a mentor in place, and he was there for 2 years. Um, and while he knew a lot of stuff, he felt really inadequate in a lot of ways. And so I worked with him for about a year or so. And at the end of that first year, just having that mentor relationship, he was perfectly fine. In fact, he ended up going to another company as a mid-level dev, and it wasn't necessarily because of the time that he had, it was because he had confidence because of, having the mentor there. So I know you're talking about kind of spinning your wheels a little bit right now. And that can be tough, especially right now when it seems like there's a lot of upheaval in the marketplace, even for senior devs. That can be hard, but I mean, you never know until you put yourself out there. So I would absolutely encourage you to at least apply to other places, and let them be the ones that shut the door. Don't shut the door yourself. Um, Back in tutorial. Yeah. Um, just be careful about that. Focus, take the tutorials and put them into real world practice, because otherwise, yeah, it'll just become a spiral and it won't be a good thing. There was another question further up. Let's see. Where was it? Mel. Such is there such thing as safe code? Many devices now have internet access but are considered unsafe. Safe code, as in like a language? No, not really. It's more about safe practices, safe coding practices. Um, there's lots of different. I don't remember off the top of my head all of them. You can probably do some research and kind of get more information on this than I'll give you here off the top of my head. But it's more about the right kinds of practices. Are you writing code that is vulnerable, not because the language that you're using or necessarily the framework that you're using, or is it, but is it vulnerable because you're not covering your bases? You're not protecting from certain things, such as, you know, creating forms that accept inputs that are not, you know, that are not filtered for SQL statements. You know, that was a big thing years ago, and I think most people use frameworks that kind of handle that for them nowadays. But you know, cross-site scripting. You know, are you allowing people to or that's a SQL injection, but you know, cross-site scripting. Are you allowing people to load stuff onto your server because you've included that could do something to your server or could do something with your database, the information in there. So it's not so much necessarily having safe code from a language standpoint. It's more understanding where the vulnerabilities are in any application and making sure that you have code in place that protects you from that. So making sure that you're sanitizing the inputs that are coming from forms, making sure that you're not loading as much as possible, not just loading a bunch of third-party scripts into your application. The more control you have over what other people can do from the outside, the more secure your application is going to be. But at the end of the day, as fatalistic as this sounds, if somebody wants to get in, they're probably going to get in. If somebody is smart enough and nefarious enough, they're going to find a way. So I'm not saying we don't worry about security, but I'm saying we need to. There's not a whole lot that you can do outside of just best practices. So I would look up, if you're working with a specific language, if you're working with a specific framework, look up and see what their best practices are, because most likely there's some really good information in their documentation or information just in other tutorials and blogs and things like that for your specific use case. But yeah, there's no like perfect language. Hey, if you code in this language, it's always going to be secure. Unfortunately, all of them have the same problems, and it's how we write our code. So there's that. Congratulations. Thank you, Dimitri. Good to see you here. Thanks for the congratulations. We've got 1,000 subscribers now, 1,020, something like that, if I remember correctly. I just had it up a minute ago and I think I closed it. Yeah, 1,020 subscribers. So, yeah, didn't know that we would get here. I had hoped that we could do this, celebrate this by the end of January, but we got what was it, 17 days later, so that's not too bad. 17 days later, we are gonna try. I'm gonna, you know, annoy everyone on every video that I upload to subscribe. Obviously, that's the YouTube way. So I'm gonna obviously be asking people to subscribe. But our goal is to try to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So we've still got lots of time for that. But I'm gonna, you know, you'll hear me say that many more times throughout this year, so you'll probably get sick of it unless we reach 5,000 subscribers really fast. I don't know. But we'll see. But yeah, so thank you. It was fast. It is interesting. You know, you always look up and you see like these big name YouTubers, you know, and it's like they've got, you know, several 100,000 subscribers, and you're like, man, that would be awesome. But that would also be a lot of work too. So thankfully it's not super fast. You know, I'm not talking about anything that lots and lots and lots of people want to hear about. I'm talking about stuff that's a little bit more niche maybe than some of those other guys out there. And that's good. It gives me time to figure out what I'm doing while we don't have tons and tons of people. But yeah, 1,000 subscribers, that's a lot of subscribers. That's a lot of people being willing to sit here and listen to me blabber on about things. So I certainly appreciate it. And at the end of the day, hopefully it's helpful for you guys, whether it's the live streams, whether it's videos that I put up in a series, or just random, you know, one-off videos. You know, at the end of the day, the goal is for you guys to be helped. whether that's just one little piece of advice or whether that's a lot of advice, if you get one thing from me that helps you kind of move forward or just encourages you. A lot of times I know as junior devs, especially, it can be really frustrating when you're not seeing the success that you hope to see, or that maybe somebody kind of told you should be seeing. And especially in the current environment like this, where it's really hard for a lot of junior devs to get that first job, it can be really discouraging, and I get that. And so if I can do something that either takes your mind off of that, or something that encourages you to keep going and to keep learning, even if it is just as a hobby, maybe you don't ever end up using it as your full-time job, but it's just a hobby, and it's enjoyable to you, and I can help you enjoy that. Great. That's exactly what I'm here for. If I can just help you answer questions or help you kind of figure out what your direction is, that's something that, going back to that question about like the MERN stack, right? Or even Dean's question here about, should I apply for this job or that job? The thing that I love the most about this job is there is so much out there that you can do as a developer. Man, there's just so many different avenues that you could go down. You can go down DevOps, mobile development, website development, web application development, front end, back end, frameworks, all these different things. And none of them are necessarily wrong. That's the cool part to me. None of them are necessarily a bad choice. Now, if you're learning Cold Fusion right now, that might be a bad choice because that's not really a thing anymore. But really, most things that you choose are going to be good options. I actually just talked to, who was I talking to? A friend of mine yesterday, a couple days ago, I think, was just telling me that they were going to start learning Python. And like, I would never have thought this person would be a developer. They just never seemed necessarily that interested in it. But they're kind of interested in artificial intelligence, and some of the stuff they've been reading has been Python heavy, so they're thinking about learning Python. I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, there's so many avenues in the development world that you could jump into. I don't know that there's a wrong answer. I don't think there's a wrong direction to go down. The question really for me is, what interests you? If you have the time, learn something that looks cool. Learn something that looks like you would enjoy it. If you need to get a job, learn something that looks like people are hiring for. But enjoy it. I think that's the thing to me. There's so much that you can learn. There's always an opportunity to learn something new. I learn something new every single day. And I don't get to code nearly as much as I used to. I'm a lead dev. I actually am a lead on 3 separate projects for our company. So there's a lot of my time gets taken up, administration tasks and working with the devs that are on the teams and kind of helping them know what they need to do, directing the project, directing their work so that the project gets done. And, but even though I don't spend as much time coding as I used to, I'm still learning new stuff all the time, whether it's a new DevOps thing or even just new things about the framework that we use. That's what I love about this, is there's always something new to learn, even if I just stay in my one lane, of the lamp stack or the linen stack or whatever you want to call it, Node instead of not Node, Nginx instead of Apache, right? I mean, there's always something new to learn. You got AI now. There's just so many avenues. I would not, as a junior developer, I would not even worry about learning the wrong thing. I would just worry about learning well. Whatever it is you're trying to learn it well, because there's always going to be something new to learn. There's always going to be something cool that just came out, and you need to be able to learn how to learn quickly, learn how to jump into stuff that you don't know and learn it as you go. That's the big thing. Don't focus so much on learning the right thing, the best thing right now. Learn something and learn it well, because at the end of the day, there's jobs for pretty much everything out there. There's even COBOL jobs still, and people haven't been doing COBOL for a very long time. But that's because companies can't get off of it. So anyway, sorry, I talked a lot about without actually looking out here to see what's going on. Yeah, Dimitri's talking about best practices for databases, and honestly, you kind of have to take best practices with a grain of salt. Um, what I tend to do is I say, um, what does this person say is best practices? What does this person say is best practices? And kind of overlay them a little bit, and take the things that are the same between all the different sources. And then once I've done that, that kind of gives me a good idea of what the most common best practices are. And then you can kind of move forward with those as your best practices. And sometimes you can take other things from other people that make sense. Um, but yeah, sometimes you do just kind of have to do some digging, some research. Um, you can always ask Chat GPT, I guess. Most of you probably know I'm not a huge fan of that. Although I will say I've been using it more and more just for one-off ad hoc things, and it's pretty powerful. It's interesting, but don't let it write your code. All right. Yeah, learning things from docs. Um, it's a two-edged sword, right? So if you don't understand the framework or the language or something like that, reading the docs can be difficult. Um, but reading the docs can also help you understand the language or the framework better too. So um, I would probably start off any learning experience. I would start off with YouTube. I would start off looking for people who are doing tutorials about the thing that I want to learn. And then when I feel like I understand the concepts that they're teaching, then I'll go to the documentation and see what else is there. Um, Another part of that would be building a project with that language or framework, whatever that tutorial's teaching. And then from there, saying, what am I missing? What is something that I want to do that the tutorial didn't teach me? And then go to the documentation and look for something specific. Because most documentation these days has good search capabilities. So if you can go in there and you can search for something that is going to specifically be something that you're working on or trying to figure out, that makes the documentation a little bit easier to understand because you already have your mindset in place to find the answer. Whereas if you're just reading through the documentation, that's typically not as beneficial as if you're searching it with a purpose. We tend to learn things and understand things better when we have a focus on it, when we're reading it with purpose. Like if you're reading any other book, whether it's a coding book or a self-help book or something like that, if you just read that book randomly, you might learn some things from it, but it wouldn't benefit you as much as if you're coming to that book saying, hey, I need to know how to do X, or I need to know how to fix this character's, problem that I have, or this habit that I have that I need to change, or I want to create this specific habit, or whatever that is, right? When you go to a resource with a purpose in mind, you're going to be more in tune with that resource giving you the information that you need to make those changes. So that's one of the things. Yes, you do need to get good at reading documentation, but try to go to the documentation on purpose, trying to answer a specific question, not necessarily just trying to understand the documentation. I think that will help you feel like the documentation's helping you more than just reading it. Trying to catch up on the chats here. Let's see. Yeah, don't rush. This is something. Okay, so this is something I'm going to be doing a video on uh, in the near future. So hopefully you guys still watch it. But you're talking about, Dimitri, you're talking about going back and rewriting your project, um, you're doing it in different languages or frameworks, which is another interesting task that'll definitely help you learn those better. But one of the best things that you can do to strengthen your skill, especially your skill of thinking. So, as developers, most of our job is thinking. Most of our job is trying to figure out the best way to solve a problem with code. And that can be any type of code, right? So, since most of our job is thinking, what we need to get better at, yes, is code. We need to get faster at code, but we need to get better at thinking through what we need to write. So, one of the things that I recommend everyone does is write a project and then go back and refactor that project. So, actually go back and look for things in your logic that can be made shorter. Generally, the goal of refactoring is removing code from your application or rewriting so that it's less code. And what that does is it forces you to rethink through the problem. See, a lot of times what happens is we'll hit a problem as we're developing something, right? And as we're working on that, we're kind of just writing the code as we're thinking through the problem. We're writing the code as we're trying to make things work, right? And so at the end of that, we often end up with code that is not wrong, but maybe isn't as efficient as it could be. And so once you've completed a whole project like that, then you've got lots of different options for you to go back through and say, okay, was this good code? Was this efficient code? Is there another way that I could orient this code? Is there a way that I could do this? Maybe I know JavaScript better now than I did when I first started, and so I know of some built-in array functions that I didn't realize were there before, so I can get rid of some for loops and use some mapping or some reduce or even sorting options, things like that can reduce the number of lines of code. So it's going back. Plus, if you're going back and refactoring your code, then you're refactoring something that you've already worked through. So you're very familiar with the logic. You're very familiar with what your goal was when you wrote that code the first time, especially if it's something that you've done recently. Refactoring other people's code can be beneficial in this way as well. But the problem with that is that you have to, first of all, understand what their code is doing and then go through and refactor it. Now, that's a skill that you also need to build because you're going to have to do that pretty much all of your development career, is deal with somebody else's code in some form or fashion. And so that you definitely need to do that. Obviously, most of you already saw a video that I put up last week about that. But if you need to start off with refactoring your own code because you need to know what that code was intended to do. Sometimes people will leave comments in their code saying what things do. In my opinion, if you write code well, then you should be able to just read what it's doing, and you should be able to understand that and then refactor it from there. So I would definitely rewrite it. I don't know that I would be rewriting it every time in something new like you are, Dimitri, but maybe that works for you. That's good. But yeah, I would definitely go back and take a project and rewrite it, and see where you can find areas to be more efficient. And if you can do that in a new language, more power to you. I would find that a little difficult, I think, at times. Yeah, that's a good point, Mel. Definitely reach out. A lot of these places have good communities. A lot of these frameworks have good communities. Reach out. There's a lot of these places have like their own Discord channels. I know we're using some packages in Laravel that have their own. They're developed by companies, so they have their own like company Discord, but they'll have channels for those specific specific packages so you can get help and ask questions and things like that. So yeah, definitely look for those communities. Of course, you can always throw in questions in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel, Discord server. You know, if you've got questions there, and if we know it, we can answer. If we don't know it, then we'll just be crickets out there. Or hopefully we'll just tell you we don't know and be kind. But yeah, definitely check for communities. Sometimes you'll find blog posts that'll point you to documentations. A lot good people on Stack Overflow will point to documentation when you're asking questions about certain things, so that can be helpful as well. Always look for answers in Stack Overflow that give you a link to a documentation page, because that means that person has spent some time in the documentation and they know kind of where to look, and they can kind of help point you in that direction. So take advantage of that anytime you can on like Stack Overflow, of course. Let's see here. Don't forget, if you're hopping in here new, we've kind of got quite a few back and forth. I've been watching the concurrent viewers number bounce up and down between about 4 and 6. We got 7 right now. So if you're watching live and you're not in the chat, say hi in the chat. If you have a question, even if we're talking about one thing and you have a question about something else, this is just a time for you guys to ask me any questions that you might have, and I'll answer them as well as I can. But just put like some question marks or something in front of your question so I can pick them out a little bit more from some of the discussion that goes on back and forth here. And we try not to have a bunch of me just staring at the screen, reading everything. But the chat is more for you guys, but I like to try to keep up with it as much as I possibly can as well. Dean started doing Laravel. Yay, Laravel. Yeah, I like it too. I actually started learning Laravel on Laravel 4. And we used it for one project at the company that I was working for at the time. And then that project, I forget what happened to it, but it went by the wayside for whatever reason. And I never really messed with it then. I was more in the JavaScript framework world for several years. And so I never really got back into PHP until my current role. And that's when I kind of got thrown back into Laravel. So some of it was familiar, but that was a jump from like Laravel 4 to Laravel 9. So that was a big leap for me in versions, but it's very easy to pick up, especially when you've used something similar before in the past. So yeah, I really like it as well. So if you have any questions about that too, certainly throw them in here or throw them in the Discord channel, and I'll try to answer those, or somebody else can. Let's see. Microelectronics. Wow. Dimitri just does everything. Yeah. Mel says, I appreciate the links more than answers to questions. And you should, honestly, because at the end of the day, if we're going to learn, we need to be able to learn on our own. And while part of the job of mentoring is answering questions, it's more the job of mentoring is more about helping you find the answers and knowing where to look for the answers and knowing what the right questions to ask are. One of the big things that junior developers struggle with a lot is, how do I know what to Google? What's the right terminology to get to the answer that I want? And for me, that's where mentoring really comes in to the equation. Excuse me. If you can have someone, even if it's not somebody necessarily that's sitting right next to you all the time, but if you've got somebody that you can go to and be like, hey, where do I find information? That's a good way to phrase it. Where do I find how to do this? Right? So learn to phrase your questions for senior devs, not for them to just answer them. Because a senior dev who's not a mentor, and again, mentoring is not really for everybody. Not everyone's good at it. Not everyone wants to do it. So not every senior developer is going to be a good mentor, but you can kind of trick them into being mentors to some degree by the way that you ask questions. So if you just ask them, hey, what did I do wrong here? Well, then they just come over, they see what you did wrong, they point to it, they tell you what you should have done, and that's it, right? They just fixed your problem for you. You didn't necessarily learn anything that's going to benefit you down the road. You just got an answer. You got a quick fix, right? It's kind of like the shortcuts that we talked about before. But how you phrase your questions can help you get mentoring, even from devs who are not necessarily looking to mentor you. So saying something like, where should I look to find out how to do X, right? What website is the best, or what should I search for in the documentation? So if I want to look up how to process queues, like what should I look for in the Laravel documentation to find queues, right? And or what's some things that you've had trouble with queues in the past? Open-ended questions like that require a little bit more of a conversation and less of just a point and click answer, right? And that's why, to your point, Mel, that's why now that you've been doing this a while, you want people to send you links to places, because you get to learn more and you'll understand it more, because you will have spent more time in the process of fixing it than just having somebody give you the answer. So you can have somebody give you an answer that you can copy paste, or you can go out there and actually learn something for yourself. And then you're more invested in what you're learning as well, because you need it to fix the problem that you're dealing with. So yeah, definitely. I mean, ask those questions in a way that tries to get people to interact with you as much as possible. So that's a great approach. Let's see if I'm missing anything else. I know we only got about 6 people or so in here, but just out of curiosity, how many of you have had somebody that you would say is a mentor as you've been learning? I think it was Dean said that he had someone that was a mentor but was gone now. How many of you have a somebody that's been a mentor to you, whether it's an official mentor or somebody that has just been a help to you along the way? I'm just interested. Maybe nobody besides Dean. Um, that's something that if you can find someone, um, that is really huge. And I know I've talked about this before, but okay, meet once a week on Teams to discuss anything. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily like right next to you all the time, but somebody that you could at least get with when you needed to. That's good. That's better. Nothing from Mel. Never from Dimitri. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Um, to me, this is the worst thing about being a developer, is that there really is not a great. There's a lot of very helpful people, right? So don't take this wrong. There's a lot of very helpful developers, but there's not a lot of opportunity, and there's not a lot of importance often placed on mentoring. And we need to find a way to do better as senior developers. So I'm not saying juniors just go out and find a mentor, because they're everywhere and they're just waiting for you to approach them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we, as senior developers, we need to do a better job of learning how to mentor. As companies, we need to do a better job of providing opportunities for mentoring. Um, Even as clients, they're paying for a product, and they want that product as cheap as possible and as fast as possible and as perfect as possible, right? But you don't always get all three. And I think there might be some companies out there that if you're willing to wait a little bit on your project and maybe pay a little bit less because of that, but allow junior developers to get into a project and learn, um, that would be really great situation where people could come in and be like an apprentice, not necessarily have to go to a boot camp or do self learning, but they could actually jump in and learn from the beginning. Maybe there's a course or something they have to take ahead of time or something like that. But that would really be ideal. But the problem is many companies who have junior developers take advantage of junior developers. And I don't say that to say that they're bad people or that they're bad companies. It's just the reality of the type of work that they do and how junior developers get into this world. Unfortunately, a lot of companies who hire junior developers do so because they're doing quick work, they're doing simple work, and they just need to get the cheapest person on the job. Um, and junior developers are going to be the cheapest people on the job, but they're also going to be the least experienced people, so they're going to be a little bit slower at things. So there's that balancing act that companies have to do, and most companies just are not set up financially to be able to mentor junior developers. They're not set up with clients that are going to be able to accept um, the delays that it's going to take for junior developers. So that's one of the big struggles that I see for junior developers right now is getting into a place that you're really going to get actual mentoring. Um, and I mean, you can just see from the chat right now, there isn't any. Now, some of you aren't actually working, but but it's just a hard thing. It's a hard thing to find a job that gives you meaningful mentoring that you really need and the time to learn and grow on the job. Um, I actually had the opportunity to work for a company where I was told that 50% of my job was to mentor two junior devs. And it was an internal project, so it wasn't working for a client, it wasn't working for other people, so it was an internal project. I think that's the main way you have to do it. It has to be an internal project because otherwise you've got other people paying the bills, and so that's kind of hard. So something that you might look for as a junior developer is look for a company that is developing their own product, whether that's for themselves in house or whether it's something that they sell to other people, but it's their project, their product. Um, those types of jobs are typically going to be better for junior devs to get mentoring. If you're looking at getting a job with a company that's like um, building websites or building custom web applications or things like that for external customers, those are not going to be as generally they're not going to provide as much mentoring as other companies will because that takes time away from the senior devs who are really there to get the output up of the projects that they're working on. So I think a suggestion that I would give to a lot of junior developers is look for companies that are working on things internally, so that you can maximize uh, the relationships within that company and the project that everyone's working on to maximize mentoring opportunities. So if you're looking for a job, obviously if you have to take any job, then take any job. But if you can be picky, I would try to find a job that has an internal product that they work on, so that you can probably get better mentoring than you will in other places. Let's see. You guys are way ahead of me. Yeah, no mentors. So Dimitri, you're still working on cabinets while and you're doing this on the side. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny you guys bring up I don't know. I'm just gonna say Prime again. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's probably pronounced it, but I haven't watched enough videos. But he actually got. I know a few of you guys came from his channel. He did a review of one of my videos uh, a while back. I almost wondered if somebody else did another review of a video recently because we got kind of a spike here in the last week or two of people coming over. But nobody said anything, so I don't know. We'll see. Um, but yeah, he definitely has a lot of different things that he talks about for sure. Um, and honestly, there's stuff he talks about I don't know. So I learned some things from him sometimes too. So again, that's one of the things I love about this job though is there's just such variety. There's so many different things that you could learn, and quite frankly, many different things that you can make money at too. So um, I don't know if you guys remember, I did that video about the secret back door of getting into development. So, and I don't know if this would even work for you, Dimitri, or not. But you know, I look at things like you're working as a cabinet installer, right? So when you look at your job as a cabinet installer and you look at how the company runs, um, maybe how you get your job set up or how the company organizes um, shipments or organizes how they put together their process of building cabinets, right? So is there an opportunity there to make the company more efficient with an app or something like that, um, to where maybe you could start developing something on the side that would help the company and either sell it to the company or get to where you can say, hey, I can make this even better for us as a company if you want to shift me over to being a developer for the company. And maybe that gives you a little bit of an increase in finances, or maybe you just make a lateral shift, make the same amount initially, but to be able to get experience doing that job full time, but it benefiting your current employer. That's something that I always recommend junior devs look into too. That's the way that I got into it originally, was building some little applications for the company that I was working for on as a customer service representative. So um, I don't think enough people consider that, and part of that is, we're going to go through this process in March when we start our project together. We're gonna talk through how do we find those concepts? How do we ask the right questions? How do we know what direction to go? From what language do we want to use, and all these decisions that we're gonna have to make. Um, how do we walk through that process? And maybe that's something that you guys could do for the company that you're working for, depending on who you're working for or what you're doing there. You never know what opportunities might open up, even if it doesn't give you a huge boost in pay. If you could get the same pay you're getting paid now to do that full time, something that you want to do full time, that could be an opportunity for you that might open up the door to future projects too. So let's see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm pushing it back a little bit in March because I need to get some more planning done for it, and it's been a little bit busy here. Are nonprofit organizations more likely to offer mentorships? Um, Probably, but not so. Like, something you have to keep in mind with nonprofits is a lot of times they're not really paying people well, if at all, for the services that are offered. Um, so if they have an IT person, if they have a developer on staff, um, there's no guarantee that developer is a good mentor, first of all. Um, but that point aside, um, this is not against charities. I love charities. Uh, Nonprofit organizations, they do a lot of good work, but they're going to take what they can get. Right? So anything that you're going to offer for free, they're going to take, and they're going to take as much as they can. Um, what I've seen happen a lot, and it's unfortunate, but it's reality, is when developers work with work with charitable organizations, a lot of times, unless they have a personal vested interest in that organization, a lot of times they start off working and they do a lot of stuff at the beginning, and then there just isn't the appreciation that they're expecting to get, and a lot of times it becomes much more of a negative relationship where they're only coming to you with problems. They're only coming to you when they want something else. And especially once you start getting another real job and you still have that relationship, that's hard to keep up. Um, I'm not saying don't help nonprofits. They need help. Um, but just know going in that it probably needs to be a short-term thing. And I don't know that that's going to be a place necessarily to get good mentoring. Just because a lot of times they don't even have somebody full-time that would be able to mentor you. So I probably wouldn't recommend it. I would probably recommend, if you're going to do something with a nonprofit, that you just go in there expecting it to be a growth opportunity, or you wait until you're able to do this full time in a paying gig, and you have the experience to be able to set boundaries. Because at the end of the day, that's the big thing with nonprofits or with family members or with anybody that wants you to work for free. Um, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is that you should set boundaries, right? So, for example, I mean, I love talking to you guys. I love helping junior developers, um, but I'm not on the Discord channel 24 hours a day, right? So there's boundaries that are set up there that, you know, you're only going to be able to get a hold of me certain ways at certain times. It's not because I don't want to help people. It's because, you know, this is free. You know, so when it's free, you have to set up some boundaries, or people will always expect more. So I don't think you're going to get a lot of mentoring, Mel, from there, but it might be a good place to get some experience, experience working with a client who doesn't have to worry about paying you, but gives you an opportunity to walk through some of the things that we're going to learn here in March as we go through the live stream series. So maybe that'll help you kind of learn to interact with them. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go to that looking for mentoring. So, all right. See you, Dimitri. Thanks for hopping on here. Um, have a good night. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot more to listen to. We've gone almost an hour and a half now, and I think we're kind of winding down from the questions. So we'll probably be off here pretty soon. But yeah, take a look. I know Dimitri's put some stuff in the uh, channel in the server, the Discord server. Go look at some of their stuff on GitHub, and obviously feel free to post anything that you guys are working on if you want to get some feedback on that. I know I haven't had as much time lately to do that, but I'd love to look at some of the things that you guys are working on. So if you've got repos that you want some feedback on, let me know. Might even do it on a video if you want me to do that. So, or maybe a live stream in the future, outside of the March one, you know, outside of the project one, we might could do some reviews on things like that too, if you guys are interested in that. As always, you know, leave me questions on videos. Comments on the videos are super helpful. It just lets other people know that we're engaging around this content. So anytime you can leave some comments someplace, that's helpful to the channel. And then there's something else I was going to say. I forgot. I don't remember. Kind of in a dilemma. I'm a web developer with a little bit of experience. Should I invest time in no code framework like Framer and Webflow? Yeah, Dave roast your repos. Well, thankfully, I'm fairly kind because I'll be honest with you. Like I said earlier, I don't know everything. I've been doing this for over 15 years, but I know I work with a lot of developers that are a lot better than I am at development. So I'm certainly not. I'm not going to roast you very hard. That's for sure. Um, I might point out a few things here and there, but sorry. Getting back to this question from Harsh. Um, this is just my opinion, as with everything that I've said. Obviously, um, I am not a fan of no code and low code if you want to be a developer. Um, those options are good. I'll use good in quotes. Those options are good for doing a quick proof of concept, right? So those are good for kind of creating something really fast to decide if this is the right direction that you want to go, to decide if this is something, let's say, for example, you're building an application, excuse me, you're building an application they're going to sell. Um, or something like that, right? So something, a proof of concept. Maybe you need to build something quickly so that you can get funding from investors to be able to build a dev team and actually build it out the way that you want to. Um, I've just worked with multiple people over the years who have obviously more recently because it's more recent, but who have started with no code solutions or low code solutions, and every single project that I've seen like that, they run into problems. One of the problems that they run into is when they need to scale up, they don't have the money to scale up. By that, I mean they build something and maybe they pay somebody to use a low code, no code solution, but they really haven't, even using the product, they really haven't been able to get enough income from their current clients that they're able to support new development. Um, and so that's why I would say if you're going to use that, I would use it as a proof of concept in order to get investing. Because the other problem that happens is inevitably you outgrow what you've built. Um, Either you need a better data structure than you had in your current setup, whatever the framework is that you're using, or it gets more expensive when you've got stuff that is that's being hosted by third parties and you're using all of their stuff that they've created for this no code or low code solution. They charge you a lot of money for that. So the more data you store, the more users that are connecting to it, it's going to end up actually costing you more in the long run to scale that usage up than it will be to build something, that you really need to meet your needs. Inevitably, you're going to reach a point where you need functionality that is not easily added to a low code or no code solution. And then you're in a huge dilemma. Do you build that as a separate entity and try to connect it somehow? Do you pay somebody to build everything from scratch at that point? So there's just there's a lot of problems that happen down the road. I would say if you're going to use no code or low code, understand that it's a temporary thing. Don't expect to scale it. Um, some people have been able to do that. I read a LinkedIn post recently from somebody who was still running a project off of like Google Forms or something like that, and they had like millions of dollars or something. That is the exception. That is not the rule. So most of the time, anything that you create um, is going to be temporary when it comes to that stuff, and it's not designed to do anything and everything. And eventually, you're gonna run into something that you're gonna need real development for. And as a developer, I wouldn't use it because you're stunting your learning process. You're stunting your growth. Because what you're doing is you're making yourself rely on services that are not always going to give you everything that you need. And what you really need is the ability to build out the things that you need. And when you rely on those no code or low code solutions, you're kind of stunting your growth. You're short circuiting your ability to learn, partially because you're spending a lot of time learning this solution rather than learning how to come up with your own solutions. And that's where, even with frameworks, we have to be careful that we don't get so reliant on the framework that if it doesn't provide what we want, we're out of luck, right? So I don't like low code or no code for that purpose. I think it has a use case, but I think for most web developers, I would not encourage it. I would encourage it more for people who are not studying development, who are looking to try to get something up and running quickly as a proof of concept. So hopefully that wasn't too harsh for harsh. See what I did there? All right. I am going to go ahead and shut it down now. If you guys do have any other questions, certainly feel free to leave them as comments on the video afterwards. If you're watching this later, this live stream later, leave me a comment or a question there, and I'll answer it either in an upcoming live stream or an upcoming video. Let's see. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for the insight. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, certainly feel free to leave comments, leave me questions. You can always leave me a question in the Discord server. The link should be in the description, and you should also be able to contact me via devmentordave.com. There's a web form there. So obviously you can get a hold of me there. I do read all the emails, even the spam emails that come through that. So feel free to contact me there as well. So thank you, everybody. Everybody's saying good night now. So thank you for jumping on here. We'll do this again. At some point, I'll put an announcement out once I know when the next one is going to be. And I'll see you. Definitely, it won't be this Saturday because I've got a board game night coming up this Saturday. So I'll be playing board games. But and a basketball tournament for my son. So no stream this Saturday, but I'll let you guys know when the next one's going to be. And perfect, Cody, jumping in at the last minute. Why are there so many potholes in Jackson County? We can discuss that offline. All right, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. I've enjoyed hanging out with you guys, and hopefully it was a help to you. And I will see you on the next one.